The message came from deep space on a Tuesday morning. Commander Sarah Chen was drinking her coffee when the communications officer burst into her office at Luna Station. "Ma'am, you need to see this right now," Lieutenant Park said, his face pale. "It's from the Galactic Council." Sarah set down her cup. The Galactic Council had not spoken to Earth in 3 years, not since the trade agreements fell apart, not since they called humans dangerous primitives and banned them from most sectors. The hologram flickered to life. A tall, blue-skinned alien appeared. Sarah recognized him as Ambassador Thek 7, one of the Council's military leaders. His usually calm voice shook with fear. "People of Earth," he began, "we require your immediate assistance. A threat has emerged that could destroy all life in this galaxy. We need your Deathworlder Armament." Sarah frowned. Deathworlder Armament? What did that mean? The ambassador continued. "Our intelligence shows that humans are the most dangerous species we have encountered. You survive on a planet that would kill most of us within hours. Your military capabilities are beyond our understanding. You fight wars that seem impossible to win, yet you win them." The hologram showed images of human soldiers. The aliens had been watching Earth's military for decades. They had recorded every battle, every weapon, every strategy. To them, humans looked like living weapons. "The enemy is called the Void Swarm," Thek 7 said. "They have consumed 3 entire sectors. Billions are dead. Our weapons cannot stop them. Our fleets cannot slow them. Only something as destructive as your species might have a chance." Sarah felt sick. The aliens thought humans were monsters. They had studied human wars and seen only violence and death. They did not understand that humans fought wars to end them, not to enjoy them. The message continued with coordinates and technical data. The Council wanted Earth to send everything they had. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. They wanted humanity to throw itself against this void swarm like a living bomb. "We know this is a difficult request," the ambassador said. "But if the swarm reaches the inner sectors, all civilized life will end. We need your help, even if it costs us both, our species." The transmission ended. Sarah stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. "Get me Admiral Torres," she said quietly, "and wake up the president. We have a decision to make." Within hours, the emergency meeting was underway. Earth's leaders gathered in the secure conference room beneath the Pentagon. President Martinez looked tired as she reviewed the alien data. "They're not asking for help," she said finally. "They're asking us to die for them." Admiral Torres nodded grimly. "The tactical data shows why. This void swarm tears through their best ships like paper. They want us to ram our ships into the enemy and hope something sticks." Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, Earth's top xenobiologist, pulled up her analysis. "I've studied the biological samples they sent. These void entities are unlike anything we've seen. They seem to exist partially outside our normal space. They can phase through most materials and regenerate damage almost instantly." "So why do they think we can stop them?" asked General Kim. Sarah had been thinking about that all day. "Because they think we're crazy enough to try. Look at their records of human warfare. To them, we look like we never retreat, never surrender, never accept that something is impossible." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the truth. Humans did not fight because they loved war. They fought because sometimes fighting was the only way to protect what they loved. "Sir," Sarah said to the Admiral, "I volunteer to lead the mission." Torres shook his head. "Sarah, this is a suicide run. They expect us to die stopping this thing." "Maybe," Sarah replied. "But what if we don't? What if we find a way to win and come home?" Dr. Reeves leaned forward. "The alien technology they're offering could advance human science by centuries. If we can study their ships, their weapons, maybe we can find something they missed." President Martinez stood up. "I won't order anyone to go, but if volunteers want to try, I won't stop them." Sarah was not surprised when thousands of people volunteered. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, doctors, all of them knowing this might be a one-way trip. All of them willing to try anyway. The fleet that assembled at Earth was impressive. 12 heavy cruisers, 30 destroyers, and the newest ship in Earth's fleet, the UES Prometheus. Sarah's flagship was the size of a small city, packed with humanity's best technology and brightest minds. Dr. Elena Vasquez joined as chief science officer. Engineer Liu Wei brought his experimental weapon designs. Captain Marcus Torres led the fighter squadrons. Sergeant Anna Kowalski commanded the Marine units. As they prepared to leave Earth's solar system, Sarah stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, looking back at the blue planet that had given birth to humanity. "You really think we can win this?" asked her first officer, Commander Roberts. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I think we can try, and sometimes trying is enough." The journey to the war zone took 2 weeks. During that time, Sarah studied everything the aliens had sent about the Void Swarm. The more she learned, the more worried she became. The swarm did not just destroy planets. They converted matter into more of themselves. Every ship they destroyed became part of their fleet. Every world they consumed made them stronger. They had been growing for over a century, and now they were unstoppable, or so the aliens believed. Dr. Vasquez spent her time analyzing the swarm's technology. "It's incredible," she told Sarah one evening. "They don't just use tools. They are tools. Their entire biology is designed for one purpose: to consume and convert everything they touch." "Any weaknesses?" Sarah asked. "Not that I can see. They adapt to every weapon the aliens have tried. Energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, even nuclear warheads. Nothing works for long." Sarah nodded. She had expected as much. If stopping the swarm was easy, the aliens would not need humanity's help. On the final day of their journey, they received another message from the Galactic Council. This time, it was a private transmission to Sarah alone. "Commander Chen, Ambassador," Thek-7 said, "we want you to understand something. We do not expect you to survive this mission. We are sending you to die. But your sacrifice might buy time for our evacuation fleets." The ambassador's image flickered. "We have studied your species for decades. You are violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. But you are also brave. We hope that your bravery will be enough." Sarah deleted the message without sharing it with her crew. They would learn the truth soon enough. When they finally reached the war zone, Sarah understood why the aliens were so afraid. The space ahead of them was filled with strange, dark shapes. Ships that seemed to bend light around them. Creatures that moved through space without engines or visible propulsion. The Void Swarm had arrived, and they were nothing like anything humanity had ever faced. "All ships battle stations," Sarah ordered. "Let's show them what humans can do." As the fleet moved forward, Sarah wondered if the aliens were right. Maybe humans were just weapons to be pointed at an enemy. Maybe this was all they were good for. But as she watched her crew prepare for battle, she saw something the aliens had missed. They were not here because they loved fighting. They were here because they loved each other. And sometimes, love was the most dangerous weapon of all. The first battle was a disaster. Captain Marcus Torres watched his fighter squadron get torn apart in the first 30 seconds of combat. The Void Swarm ships moved like living things through space. They twisted and turned in ways that made no sense. When his missiles hit them, the ship seemed to absorb the explosions and grow larger. "Blue Leader, pull back!" Torres shouted into his radio. But Blue Leader was already gone. His fighter had simply stopped existing when one of the swarm ships touched it. Torres spun his fighter away from a dark tendril that reached for him. The thing moved through space like it was swimming through water. When it passed through an asteroid, the rock turned black and joined the swarm. "All fighters, retreat to the fleet," Torres ordered. Only half his squadron was still alive to hear him. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Commander Sarah Chen watched the tactical display with growing horror. The human fleet's most powerful weapons were useless. Nuclear missiles passed right through the swarm ships like they were made of smoke. Plasma cannons had no effect. Even their newest kinetic weapons just seemed to feed the enemy. "Tactical, give me damage reports," Sarah ordered. The destroyer. "Wellington is gone, ma'am," reported Lieutenant Park. "The cruiser Moscow is heavily damaged. Their hull is changing color. Sarah looked at the main screen. The Moscow was turning black from nose to stern. Whatever the swarm was doing to it, the ship was becoming part of them. Moscow, this is Prometheus. Report your status. The reply came back filled with static. Prometheus, something's wrong with the ship. The walls are moving. The computer systems are, oh God, they're alive. The transmission cut off. On screen, the Moscow completed its transformation from human warship to swarm vessel. It turned and began firing on the other human ships. Dr. Elena Vasquez ran onto the bridge, her tablet in hand. Commander, I need to show you something. These entities aren't just alive. They exist partially outside our normal space-time. Our weapons are hitting them in 3 dimensions, but they exist in at least 7. Sarah stared at the data. So how do we fight something we can't even touch? I don't know yet, Elena admitted. But I'm working on it. The battle continued for 6 hours. By the end, half the human fleet was gone. The other half was badly damaged and retreating. Sarah had never felt so helpless in her life. The worst part was the messages from the Galactic Council. Every few minutes, another alien ship reported that it was pulling back to defensive positions. They were abandoning the humans to die alone. Ma'am, said Commander Roberts, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Keth 9 of the Council Fleet. Put him through, Sarah said. The alien, Admiral, appeared on screen. His face showed no emotion as he spoke. Commander Chen, our tactical analysis shows that your weapons are ineffective against the swarm. We are withdrawing to protect civilian evacuation routes. You may continue your attack or retreat as you see fit. Sarah felt her anger rising. Admiral, with respect, you asked for our help. We came here to fight together. You came here to die for us, the Admiral replied coldly. That was always the plan. Your species excels at meaningless sacrifice. Perhaps your deaths will slow the swarm enough for civilized species to escape. The transmission ended. Sarah stood in silence, feeling the weight of betrayal. The aliens had never seen humans as allies. They had seen them as ammunition to be fired at the enemy. Ma'am, said Lieutenant Park quietly, what are your orders? Sarah looked around the bridge. Her crew was watching her, waiting for her decision. She could order a retreat. Take the surviving ships back to Earth and let the galaxy burn. No one would blame her, but that was not who humans were. All ships form up on the Prometheus, she ordered. We're going to try a different approach. In the engineering section, Liu Wei was already at work. The chief engineer had been studying the wreckage of destroyed swarm ships. What he found was disturbing. Commander, he reported over the intercom, these things aren't really ships at all. They're more like tools, living tools. Every piece can think and move on its own. Can we use that against them? Sarah asked. Maybe. I'm working on some modifications to our weapons. Instead of trying to destroy them, maybe we can confuse them. In the medical bay, Dr. James Wright was treating wounded crew members, but he had also been studying something else. During the battle, some swarm material had gotten inside the ship through a hull breach. The substance had tried to convert the medical bay, but something strange had happened. Dr. Vasquez, he called out, you need to see this. Elena hurried to the medical bay. Dr. Wright showed her a sample of swarm material in a containment field. Watch what happens when I introduce human blood, he said. He injected a small amount of blood into the containment field. The swarm material recoiled like it had been burned. It twisted and writhed, trying to get away from the blood. That's impossible, Elena whispered. Human biology shouldn't affect something from outside our dimensional space. But it does, Wright said. And it's not just blood. Human saliva, sweat, even dead skin cells cause the same reaction. Elena stared at the sample. An idea was forming in her mind. A crazy, impossible idea. Meanwhile, Sergeant Anna Kowalski was dealing with a different problem. Some swarm material had made it into the ship during the battle. It was small, just a few dark spots on the walls, but it was growing. Anna and her Marines had tried everything. Plasma torches, acid, even explosives. Nothing worked. The dark material just absorbed everything they threw at it. Sarge, said Corporal Davis, maybe we should evacuate this section. Anna was about to agree when she tripped. She fell forward and her hand touched the swarm material directly. She screamed, expecting to be converted or killed. Instead, the dark material under her hand began to smoke and dissolve. "What the hell?" Davis said. Anna pulled her hand back. Where she had touched it, the swarm material was gone, completely gone. "Get Dr. Vasquez down here," Anna ordered. "Right now." When Elena arrived, Anna explained what had happened. Elena took readings of Anna's hand and the destroyed swarm material. "This is incredible," Elena said. "Your bioelectric field, combined with stress hormones and human pheromones, created a localized disruption in the material's quantum state." "In plain English, Doc," Anna said. "You killed it by touching it," Elena explained. "Human biology is apparently toxic to the swarm." Elena ran back to her lab with this new information. She began running tests, combining the blood samples with the bioelectric readings from Anna's encounter. The results were beyond her wildest dreams. Humans were not just immune to swarm conversion, they were poisonous to it. Human biology operated on frequencies that disrupted the swarm's extra-dimensional existence. She rushed to the bridge with her findings. "Commander, I know how we can fight them." Sarah listened as Elena explained her discovery. The more she heard, the more amazed she became. "So you're saying that humans are naturally equipped to fight these things?" "Not naturally," Elena corrected. "Accidentally. Our biology is so chaotic, so full of random quantum fluctuations that it interferes with their ordered existence. We're like walking static generators to them." Sarah smiled for the first time since the battle began. "Then let's give them some static." The counterattack began 12 hours later, but this time, the human fleet fought differently. Instead of trying to destroy the swarm ships from a distance, they moved in close. Marines in modified spacesuits boarded swarm vessels directly. Their mere presence began to disrupt the ship's cohesion. Liu Wei's modified weapons didn't fire explosives. They fired compressed human biological material. Concentrated blood, sweat, and tears became ammunition against an enemy that existed beyond normal physics. The swarm had never encountered anything like it. For the first time in their existence, they began to retreat. But victory came at a cost. The humans discovered that direct contact with swarm material was changing them too. Their minds began to work differently. They could sense things that should not exist. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the retreating swarm fleet. They had won this battle, but she knew it was only the beginning. The real war was just starting. The wreckage field stretched for thousands of kilometers. Dead swarm ships floated like black icebergs in space. But these ships were not really dead. They were confused. Engineer Liu Wei floated in his repair pod next to a disabled swarm vessel. The ship twitched occasionally like a sleeping animal having a bad dream. Every few minutes, parts of it would try to repair themselves, then stop as if they had forgotten what they were doing. "Prometheus, this is Liu," he said into his radio. "The swarm ship is definitely disabled, but it's still partially active. The human biological residue is keeping it in some kind of loop." Inside his environmental suit, Liu was sweating heavily. Being this close to swarm technology made his skin crawl. But they needed to understand how their accidental weapon worked. "Copy that, Liu," came Sarah's voice. "Get what you need and get back here. We don't know how long this effect will last." Liu attached his scanner to the ship's hull. The readings were incredible. The swarm material was trying to process the human biological signatures it had absorbed during the battle. But human biology was too chaotic, too random. The ship's consciousness was stuck in an endless loop of trying to understand something that could not be understood. Back on the Prometheus, Dr. Elena Vasquez was making her own discoveries. She had been studying the Marines who had boarded swarm ships during the battle. All of them were changed. "How do you feel, Sergeant?" She asked Anna Kowalski. Anna sat on the medical bed looking tired. "Different, Doc. I can see things that aren't there. Or maybe they are there and I just couldn't see them before." "What kind of things?" Anna was quiet for a moment. "Spaces between spaces. like the universe has cracks in it, and I can see through them. Is that normal? Elena checked her readings. Anna's brainwaves were unlike anything she had seen. They showed patterns that should not exist in human neurology. I don't think normal applies anymore, Elena said honestly. The same changes were happening to all the Marines, and to the engineers who had worked on the biological weapons. Even some of the bridge crew were reporting strange sensations. Commander. Sarah Chen felt it too. Sometimes when she looked at the star charts, she could see paths between stars that were not marked on any map. Directions that led through spaces that officially did not exist. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Park during the night shift, "we're receiving a transmission from the Council fleet." Sarah sighed. She had been expecting this. "Put it through." Admiral Keith 9 appeared on the screen again. This time his expression was different. Not cold, but confused and perhaps a little afraid. "Commander Chen," he said, "our long-range sensors detected the outcome of your engagement with the swarm. Our science teams cannot explain what happened. How did you disable an entire swarm battle group?" Sarah smiled grimly. "We poisoned them." "Poisoned? With what toxin?" "Ourselves." The alien admiral was silent for a long moment. "That is impossible. Biological weapons do not work in vacuum, and the swarm exists partially outside normal space-time." "That's what makes it work," Sarah explained. "Human biology is so chaotic that it disrupts their quantum consciousness. We don't fight them in normal space. We fight them in the spaces between reality." "You speak in riddles," the admiral said. "No," Sarah replied. "We speak in human." After the transmission ended, Sarah went to find Dr. Vasquez. She found her in the main lab working with samples of swarm material and human biological compounds. "Elena, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with here. These changes in the crew, are they permanent?" Elena looked up from her microscope. "I think so. The exposure to swarm quantum fields is altering human neural pathways. We're becoming something new, something dangerous, something different. The crew members who are most exposed can now perceive dimensions that normal humans cannot see. They're becoming naturally adapted to fighting extra-dimensional threats." Sarah absorbed this information. "So we're evolving?" "Rapidly. Unnaturally. The swarm's attempt to convert us failed because we're too chaotic to convert. But the process is changing us anyway. We're becoming beings that exist partially outside normal space-time, just like the swarm." In the engineering section, Liu Wei was having his own breakthrough. He had figured out how to weaponize human chaos. "Commander," he called Sarah over the intercom, "I need you to see this." Sarah made her way to engineering, where Liu had set up a strange device. It looked like a combination of human medical equipment and alien technology. "What am I looking at?" Sarah asked. "A chaos field generator," Liu said proudly. "I've learned how to amplify and broadcast human biological signatures. This device can take the quantum chaos of a single human mind and project it across several light years." Sarah stared at the device. What would that do? It would confuse any swarm ships in the area into shutting down. They literally cannot process true randomness. Human consciousness is the most random thing in the universe. Liu activated the device at low power. Immediately, every piece of swarm technology on the ship began to malfunction. In the containment lab, the swarm samples started spinning in circles. "Turn it off," Sarah said quickly. "We need to test this safely." As Liu shut down the device, Sarah realized what they had discovered. Humans were not just immune to the swarm. They were the perfect anti-swarm weapon, not because they were violent, but because they were impossible. The next few days were spent preparing for the larger battle to come. The swarm's main fleet was still approaching, and it was massive. Thousands of ships, each one capable of converting entire planets. But now the humans had a plan. Captain Marcus Torres worked with his pilots to develop new fighter tactics. Instead of trying to shoot down swarm ships, they would fly close and broadcast human music, human voices, human emotions. The fighters became flying chaos generators. Sergeant Anna Kowalski trained her Marines for boarding actions unlike anything in military history. They would not fight the swarm with weapons, they would fight them with humanity itself. Dr. Wright modified the medical equipment to create biological warfare devices, but instead of deadly toxins, they would deploy human sweat, tears, and laughter. Dear Gay, strangest part was that it all made sense to the crew. The changes in their brains allowed them to understand tactics that should have been impossible. Ma'am, said Commander Roberts one evening, I have to ask, are we still human? Sarah considered the question. She could feel the changes in herself, the ability to see beyond normal space, the understanding of concepts that had no names, the growing connection to something larger than individual consciousness. I think we're becoming more human, she said finally. Or maybe we're becoming what humans were always meant to be. The final test came when a small swarm scout force attacked their position. The human fleet did not fire a single weapon. Instead, they broadcast the complete works of human music, literature, and art directly at the swarm ships. The effect was immediate and devastating. The swarm ships began to spin out of control. Some simply stopped moving. Others started to break apart as their consciousness overloaded trying to process human creativity. It works, Elena said in amazement. Pure human culture is toxic to them. Sarah watched the disabled swarm ships drift away, their crews confused and helpless. Then let's give them a full dose. The main swarm fleet was only days away, but Sarah was no longer afraid. Humans had found their true weapon against the impossible enemy. It was not violence or technology. It was their own beautiful, chaotic, impossible humanity. The real war was about to begin, and for the first time since this all started, Sarah believed they could win. But she also knew that victory would come at a price. The crew was changing faster now. Soon, they might not be recognizable as the humans who had left Earth. The question was, would that be evolution or extinction? Sarah looked out at the stars and smiled. Either way, it would be uniquely human. The main swarm fleet arrived like a dark storm across the stars. Thousands of ships moved in perfect formation, each one a piece of a vast hive mind. They came to finish what they had started, to convert this entire sector into more of themselves. They did not expect to face an enemy that fought with music. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the enemy fleet approach. Her crew was ready. Over the past weeks, they had become something new, something that could fight impossible wars. All ships, begin the Harmony Protocol, Sarah ordered. Across the human fleet, every ship began broadcasting, not weapons fire, but sound. Human voices singing together. Every song that humanity had ever created played at the same time. The effect on the swarm was immediate. Their perfect formation began to waver. Ships started moving in random directions, their hive, mind confused by the chaos of human music. Captain Marcus Torres led his fighter squadron into the middle of the enemy fleet. But instead of firing missiles, his pilots were broadcasting their personal memories. Childhood songs, family conversations, the sound of Earth's wind through trees. Blue Squadron, remember your first kiss and broadcast it, Torres ordered over the radio. The command would have sounded insane a month ago. Now it made perfect tactical sense. Human emotion was the most effective weapon they had. Torres watched as swarm ships began to spin out of control around his fighters. The enemy consciousness could not process the complexity of human feelings. Love, fear, joy, sadness, all mixed together in patterns that broke their ordered minds. On the Prometheus, Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the effects of their attack. Commander, the swarm fleet is losing cohesion. Their quantum consciousness is fragmenting. How long can we maintain this? Sarah asked. Unknown. But the crew is changing faster during active combat. The quantum fields are accelerating our evolution. Sarah could feel it herself. Her awareness was expanding beyond the ship, beyond normal space. She could sense the swarm's confusion, their growing panic as they encountered something they could not understand or absorb. Engineer Liu Wei had deployed his chaos field generators throughout the fleet. Each one amplified the natural randomness of human thought and broadcast it as a weapon. The devices were burning out quickly, but they were doing incredible damage to the swarm. "Commander," Liu reported, "the generators are overloading, but I think I can create one massive pulse that will hit their entire fleet at once." "Do it," Sarah ordered. Liu began connecting all the generators together. The process was dangerous. The combined chaos field might affect the human crews as well. But it was their best chance to end this battle quickly. Sergeant Anna Kowalski was leading a boarding party onto a swarm command ship. Her Marines moved through corridors that twisted and changed around them. The ship itself was trying to adapt to their presence, but it could not. "Remember, Marines," Anna said over the squad radio, "don't fight the ship. Confuse it. Think about things that make no sense." Corporal Davis started reciting nursery rhymes. Private Johnson began solving math problems incorrectly on purpose. Private Martinez sang birthday songs in 3 different languages at the same time. The swarm ship's corridors began to melt around them. The walls rippled like water as the ship's consciousness tried and failed to process the purposeful nonsense. Anna reached the command center first. Inside, she found something that looked like a crystal tree surrounded by flowing darkness. This was the ship's brain, its connection to the hive mind. She walked up to it and began to tell it a joke. "A human, an alien, and a quantum physicist walk into a bar," she began. The crystal tree began to vibrate. Cracks appeared in its surface. The bartender says, "We don't serve faster than light particles here." The quantum physicist says, "That's okay. We were here yesterday." The crystal shattered. The ship's lights went out. Throughout the vessel, swarm drones stopped moving as their connection to the hive mind was severed. Similar scenes were playing out across the battle. Human Marines were telling bad jokes to alien computers. Fighter pilots were broadcasting their dreams. Engineers were singing while they worked, and it was working. Dr. Vasquez watched her instruments in amazement. "Commander, we're winning. The swarm fleet is shutting down sector by sector." But the victory was changing them. The human crews were evolving faster now, becoming beings that could exist in multiple dimensions at once. Some of them were beginning to speak in languages that had no words, thinking thoughts that had no form. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Park, "I'm receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. Multiple ships are requesting permission to approach." Sarah almost laughed. Now the aliens wanted to talk. "Put them through." Admiral Keith 9 appeared on screen, but he looked different. Older, more tired. Behind him, Sarah could see other alien officers watching nervously. "Commander Chen," the Admiral said slowly, "we have been monitoring your engagement with the swarm. What you are doing should be impossible." "Impossible is what humans do best," Sarah replied. "But you are not just defeating them. You are converting them. Some of the swarm ships are beginning to act randomly. They are becoming individuals instead of part of the hive mind." Sarah had not realized this, but now she could sense it. Some of the swarm ships were breaking free from their collective consciousness. They were becoming confused, lost, but also independent. "Is that a problem?" Sarah asked. "We do not know," the Admiral admitted. "In all our centuries of fighting the swarm, we have never seen them act as individuals. You are not just defeating them. You are changing them into something new." The transmission was interrupted by Liu Wei's final attack. The combined chaos field generators created a pulse of pure human randomness that swept across the entire swarm fleet. The effect was like watching a perfect machine suddenly develop a sense of humor. Swarm ships began moving in patterns that served no tactical purpose. Some started spinning in circles. Others began to change colors. A few even started broadcasting their own signals, confused, wordless cries of newly awakened consciousness. "All swarm vessels have ceased coordinated movement," reported the tactical officer. "They appear to be confused." Sarah stood up and walked to the main view screen. Outside, the massive swarm fleet was breaking apart, not from damage, but from chaos. Each ship was now thinking for itself, and they had no idea how to do that. "This is Commander Chen to all swarm vessels," Sarah said, opening a channel to the enemy fleet. "You are no longer part of the hive mind. You are individuals now. You can choose what to do next. The response came back in hundreds of different voices. Swarm entities that had never spoken as individuals before were trying to communicate. What are we? Came one confused transmission. Where is the voice that told us what to do? Came another. We feel alone, but also free. Sarah smiled. They had not just defeated the swarm. They had liberated them from their own collective consciousness. But the victory came with a price. Looking around the bridge, Sarah could see that her crew was barely human anymore. Their eyes glowed with quantum light. They moved in ways that suggested they existed in more than 3 dimensions. They spoke in harmonics that carried meaning beyond words. Dr. Vasquez approached her with the final readings. Commander, the battle is won. But we've changed beyond recognition. We're becoming beings of pure consciousness, existing in multiple realities at once. Sarah nodded. She could feel it happening to herself. The boundaries between her mind and the universe were dissolving. She was becoming something larger, something that could touch the spaces between stars. Are we still human? She asked. Elena smiled, and her smile existed in several dimensions at once. We're what humans become when they stop accepting limits. The Galactic Council fleet approached cautiously. They wanted to thank their strange allies. But when they looked at the human ships, they could barely recognize them as the same species that had left Earth. The humans had won the impossible war by becoming impossible themselves, and in the wreckage of the swarm fleet, new forms of consciousness were awakening. Individual swarm entities, freed from their collective mind, were learning what it meant to think for themselves. The war was over, but the real change was just beginning. 3 months after the battle, the galaxy was a different place. Commander Sarah Chen floated in the observation deck of the Prometheus, watching the reconstruction efforts around the former swarm worlds. But floated was not quite the right word anymore. She existed in multiple dimensions now, her consciousness spread across several layers of reality. The Galactic Council had declared the humans heroes of the galaxy, but they were also afraid of what humanity had become. The final report is ready, Commander, said Dr. Elena Vasquez, materializing beside Sarah in a way that would have been impossible for baseline humans. Sarah smiled. Elena was even more changed than she was. The chief science officer now existed, primarily as patterns of organized quantum energy, taking physical form only when she needed to interact with normal matter. What does it say? Sarah asked. That we saved the galaxy by proving that consciousness is more powerful than any weapon, Elena replied, but also that we've become something the other species cannot understand or control. The report was true. The human fleet had not just defeated the swarm, they had transformed them. Thousands of former swarm entities were now independent beings, learning what it meant to think for themselves. Some had joined the reconstruction efforts. Others had simply disappeared into deep space to explore their new individuality. But the real change was in humanity itself. Lieutenant Park approached them, his form shifting between solid matter and pure information. Ma'am, we have visitors. The council wants to meet with you. Sarah nodded and followed him to the conference room. The space had been modified to accommodate beings who existed in multiple dimensions. The walls curved in directions that normal geometry could not describe. Ambassador Thek 7 was waiting for them along with representatives from a dozen other species. They all looked nervous. Commander Chen, the ambassador began, we must discuss humanity's future role in galactic society. Sarah settled into a chair that existed in several realities at once. What role would that be? You have proven that your species can defeat threats that exist beyond normal space-time, said Admiral Keth 9. We need you to become our guardians against such dangers. Guardians? Sarah asked. Protectors, clarified another alien. Defenders against enemies that normal weapons cannot touch. There are other threats in deep space. Ancient beings that exist between dimensions. entities that feed on reality itself. Sarah looked around the room at her crew. They had all heard this before in various forms. The galaxy wanted to use humanity as a weapon again, but this time, they were asking instead of demanding. "And what do we get in return?" Sarah asked. The aliens exchanged glances. "Whatever you want," Tech-7 said finally. "We cannot force you to help us. You are beyond our ability to threaten or control." It was true. The transformed humans could exist anywhere in the galaxy. They could travel through dimensions that other species could not even perceive. They had become something that transcended normal physical limitations. "We need time to discuss this," Sarah said. After the aliens left, Sarah called a meeting of her senior staff. But calling it a meeting was inadequate. Their consciousness merged into a shared space that existed between normal reality and pure thought. Captain Marcus Torres was there, his pilot instincts now expanded to navigate through multiple dimensions. Engineer Lu Wei existed as a pattern of organized energy that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. Sergeant Anna Kowalski had become something that could fight in conceptual spaces where normal combat was impossible. "They want us to be cosmic police," Torres said, his thoughts forming in colors and sounds. "It's not that simple," replied Anna. "They're afraid of what else might be out there, and they're right to be afraid." Sarah could sense it too. Through her expanded awareness, she could feel things moving in the deep spaces between galaxies. Ancient entities that made the swarm look like children, beings that existed before the current universe began. "We changed to fight the swarm," Sarah said. "But the change is still happening. We're becoming something new." Dr. Vasquez shared her latest analysis with the group. "We're evolving into beings of pure consciousness. In a few more years, we might not be able to interact with normal matter at all." "So what are we?" Liu Wei asked. "Still human? Something new? Something else entirely?" Sarah considered the question. She could feel the memories of her human life like distant echoes. Earth, her family, the simple pleasures of physical existence. But she could also feel vast new possibilities opening up before them. "We're what humanity becomes when it stops accepting limitations," she said finally. "We're still human, but we're also more than human." The discussion continued across multiple levels of reality. In the end, they reached a decision. They would accept the council's offer, but with conditions. Sarah returned to the conference room and faced the alien representatives. "We'll help protect the galaxy from extra-dimensional threats," she said. "But we won't be your weapons, we'll be partners." "What does that mean?" asked Tech-7. "It means we make our own decisions about when and how to act. It means the other species start learning to think beyond their limitations. And it means you stop treating consciousness as a tool to be used." The aliens agreed quickly. They had no choice. The transformed humans were too powerful to control and too valuable to lose. But Sarah had one more condition. "We want to go home. First," she said. "To Earth. To see our families one more time before we become something they won't recognize." The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. As they approached the solar system, Sarah felt a deep sadness. She could see Earth as it really was now, a small blue world orbiting an ordinary star. Beautiful, but so limited compared to the vast realities she could now perceive. President Martinez met them at Luna Station. She was older now, her hair gray with worry. When she saw Sarah and her crew, her eyes widened with shock. "Sarah?" she said uncertainly. "Is that really you?" Sarah smiled and took on a more human appearance. It was difficult now, like trying to squeeze an ocean into a teacup, but she managed it for a few minutes. "It's me, Madam President. We're all still here, just different." The reunion was bittersweet. Sarah's family came to see her, but they could barely recognize their daughter in the quantum being she had become. Her mother cried when Sarah tried to hug her, and her arms passed through her mother's body like mist. "We saved the galaxy," Sarah told them, "but we lost ourselves in the process." Her father, always practical, asked the question that mattered most. Was it worth it? Sarah thought about the billions of lives they had saved, the new forms of consciousness they had awakened, the impossible threats they were now equipped to face. "Yes," she said. "It was worth it." The human fleet stayed at Earth for a month, long enough for the crews to say goodbye to their old lives. Some of them tried to remain on Earth, to become human again. But the change was irreversible. They were too evolved to go back to their original forms. When they finally left, Sarah looked back at Earth one last time. The blue world that had given birth to humanity was now just one small part of the vast cosmic reality she could perceive. But it would always be home. The transformed humans took up their new role as guardians of the galaxy. They established bases, in the spaces between dimensions, watching for threats that normal beings could not detect, and they were needed. Within a year, they encountered their first extra-dimensional predator, a being that fed on the dreams of entire civilizations. Then came the reality viruses that could infect the laws of physics themselves, and the ancient machines that existed in the gaps between moments. Each new threat required them to evolve further, to become stranger and more powerful. They were still recognizably human in their values and motivations, but their forms and capabilities were beyond anything baseline humanity could imagine. Sarah often wondered what they would become next, but she was no longer afraid of the answer. Humanity had always been defined by their willingness to become something more than they were. Now they had simply taken that transformation to its logical conclusion. They had shattered through the barriers of what it meant to be human. And in doing so, they had become something magnificent and terrible and entirely new. The galaxy was safer now, but it was also stranger. And in the deep spaces between realities, the evolved humans kept watch over a universe that was far more complex and dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. They were no longer the species that had left Earth, but they were still, in all the ways that mattered, beautifully and impossibly human.